Alright, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the Writer's Bookshelf. So today we're going to focus on our final bonus episode of the season, which if you've been keeping track of how we've been doing things, this is going to be another word-based book. That's been the common theme throughout the entire season so far, well, the bonus seasons. And yes, so today's no different. And the book we're going to focus on today is called Word Savvy by Nancy Ragno. And what this book is essentially, it's a how-to guide on how to use words properly. And I know that sounds like, well, here we are with another thesaurus. Actually, no. What this is going to be a reminder of how easy it is to butcher the English language. Especially when you're learning it, but even when you're a long-time user of English, you're native, whatever. The point the book makes is, the more vocabulary we learn, the more easy it is for us to misuse it. And so what this book is about is trying to help us, literally use the right word every time, all the time. And, it recognizes the fact that when we're trying to speak well, write well, all that, we do have a habit of basing off of what our, flawed knowledge is. Whenever we learn by hearing, for example, we can hear the homonym of a word, but chances are, if we don't know the spelling or if we don't know the meaning of what each word means, like, for example, then, THEN versus than, THAN, we do have the tendency to mess that up. Your and your is another one, YOUR versus YOU apostrophe RE. Funny story about that. I don't know if I should share it, but I got a friend of mine who busted a liar from a misspelling like that. It was like a constant misspelling, and that went over really well. But the other things too, where if you want to actually get good at English grammar, writing, all of that, you want to learn how to use words properly. And so this book does that, because it's not a thesaurus per se, because thesaurus is when you give all the different words, categorical words and all that. This is different. This is showing you like word pairs, things that are commonly misinterpreted, misused. It shows you the correct way of using commonly misused words. So it's actually a pretty thorough book. It gives you quizzes and things inside too to help you practice the things that you're trying to learn. But it's pretty short. It's not a fun book to read, and I think I alluded this to in my last video. It's taken me a while to get through it because it's not the kind of book you sit through and read for fun. It is very much an educational book, and very much a book that reminds you how much you think you know your English language without actually knowing it, unless you really practice it. And so that comes to another point too, is whenever we do write, we do need to practice as much as we can, but we don't want to practice badly. We don't want to add to bad knowledge. We want to make sure we unlearn the stuff that we abused in writing, reading, all that, and learn it the proper way. And so this is something where we can start to retrain our way of remembering what words are. There's some of the tips that this book gives. So let me show you just some of the chapters in here and what it covers. So here's the contents. Again, it's fairly short. There is a couple page introduction that will get you through that. Also tells you how to use the book. But the chapter titles are this. You have number one, it's avoid the number one mistake of today's writers. And that's really coming back to the idea of the more vocabulary we learn, the easier it is for us to abuse it and misuse it. So you want to go through and learn what the words actually mean, and be aware that with homonyms in particular, or even not necessarily homonyms, but words that are oftenly paired together that are misused. Like just some of the examples they give here would be the difference between like judicious and judicial, jealous and zealous. That one's pretty easy. I don't know why anyone would get that confused, but I'm not just anybody. A good one is immigrate and immigrate. So IMMI versus EMI. So these are some of the things that they cover in these sections on how to actually figure out what the proper way of using a word is. So here's an example. They have, let's see, I want to say historic and historical is a good one, just because that's the page I'm on. But the way they have this particular chapter set up is they give you the sample of the two words side by side, and then they give you the quick overview of usage of people who've quoted with that word. So you have, according to Bernie Lencioni, I don't know what that is. So now 0 for 50 would be a historic achievement on any other team, but on the Cubs it is usually called September. And then for G.K. Chesterton, he says for the other word, fable is more historical than fact, because fact tells us about one man and fable tells us about a million men. And so they give you the definition of the two differences. So they're both adjectives, which is important to know. You got historic as having importance or fame in history or famous, and then historical is of or related to history, having the characteristics of history, based on history. And so then they give you more examples of how that differs so that you're not entirely confused by what that means. And then they give you a usage note. They give you memory tricks. So a memory trick would be connect historic to a historic moment or historical event. And then a historic goal would be like a historical novel, historical character. I would like to write historical novel. So in a way, they're trying to, it's almost like they're taking a real event versus a made-up event, or an event that's uses something that would be historic in nature, but it would become a historical event because it's using the idea of history or something like that. So that would be an example of how the two words are very similar, but because they mean technically different things, you want to make sure you know which one is which. Another example, and by the way, I'm in the chapter called Master 76 Commonly Confused Word Pairs. It's the longest chapter in the book, the one that took me the longest to get through. The reason why it took me months to get through it, because it was boring. But either way, we want to make sure, we use the proper words. And again, I don't think you're going to want to read this cover to cover. This is really a reference book that you pick up when you need to learn something. Another example they have at the very bottom, they have moral and morale. And most of us should know the difference of that, but in case we don't, a moral is pertaining to judgment of the right and wrong of human behavior or the ethical principle taught by a fable, story, or event, whereas morale is the spirit of an individual or group, especially that exhibited by confidence, cheerfulness, and willingness to do an assigned task. So it's really practical on what this book actually covers here. And one of the reasons why I bought it, I bought it back, I think, in 2014, and it's really taken me until now to really crack it open. So 7 years, not bad. One of the reasons why I bought it is at the time I was tutoring second language students. I still am, but I was doing it then too. And I was wondering if it was a book that would not be of any benefit to them. So that was the main reason why I wanted to check it out. But at the same time, I have the same problem. There's a lot of times my memory fails, and I don't necessarily remember which word is the correct word. And I will end up Googling, let's say moral versus morale, just to make sure. But, you don't have to do that when you have a book like this. And again, that's just one chapter. There's other chapters in here, other usage areas. But just having something like that quick and to the ready will really improve your writing game just by showing that you know what you're doing. And that's really, I think, what matters. So, other than chapter 1 was again about the mistake. Chapter 2 is attacking the wrong word problem. So we'll take a look at that real quick. This is what each chapter looks like at the top. So there is, unlike last week's thesaurus, this one actually has some reading, explanation, and whatnot. So there's a section called "What Your Spell Checker Won't Tell You." It clarifies that. There's "What Your Grammar Checker Won't Tell You." Train your inner editor. What about dictionaries? Then there's methods of attack, and so this is where you begin to use the book. So chapter 2 is really about how to use the book effectively. So it is one that I encourage you guys to go and read before you really get too deep into just letting this sit on your desk. Know how to use it so that whenever you do run into the need, you're not caught up by surprise there. Chapter 3 is one we were just looking at. That's Master 76 Commonly Confused Word Pairs. Chapter 4 is Conquer 52 Commonly Misused Words. So that one's actually pretty quick and easy because it's just a chart. And that one looks like this. So this is chapter 4. And then here's just how they arrange the words. So there's only 52 of these. Excuse me. So an example would be ambivalent, mistakenly used to mean I don't care one way or another. So incorrect, I'm ambivalent about which movie to see. Either one is fine. Ambivalent means having mutually conflicting thoughts or feelings. So the correct usage would be his ambivalent feelings about marriage prevented him from popping the question. Okay. So that's an example of how they show you the way that people normally use it incorrectly or how they might use it incorrectly, and then it shows you what you're supposed to do with the word. So again, there's 52 of them. I'm not going to read all of them, but some other ones in here are compare, downgrade. I don't know how people misuse downgrade, but there you are. Etc. is a good one. Actually, I'm going to read that one. Etc. is mistakenly used to refer to people. Incorrect. The course is a benefit to writers, speakers, students, etc. Etc. actually means, it's in Latin, and so forth. And the rest, it is used at the end of a list of things, not of people. So that's a really important distinction. I don't know how many of us actually know that, especially since most of us don't speak Latin. So the correct use is bring any kind of dessert such as cheesecake, apple pie, English trifles, Bavarian cream, etc. So you can see where that's much different than people, unless you are a certain guy who's got a little muzzle on his face and likes Chianti and fava beans. So got ironic in here, peaceable, officious, odious, random. Again, some words I don't really know how people misuse, but I'm not most people, so sometimes they just misuse things. So anyway, the next chapter we got, chapter 5, is the Purge 25 no-nos from your speech and writing. So this is the practical guide to making your writing better by not doing the no-no, whatever that means. When you go through again the chart here, you have your different words. So like one good one is the word anyways. I think we've all been guilty of using the word anyways at some point in our lives. So anyways was an acceptable word in Middle English, but it has outlived its usefulness and acceptability. So you want to avoid anyways and replace it with anyway, which I think most of us do, but it depends on where you are. Anyway is an adverb, and adverbs are plural. Thus it cannot end in the S plural. Okay. So anyway means regardless, in any event, in any manner whatsoever, or whatever, nevertheless. And then the correct usage is, I know I probably won't win, but I intend to enter the contest anyway. Okay. So does anybody really use the word anyways? I think it depends on where you are, but the fact that it's in there just shows that it is probably in there every so often. Like, people probably do say it, and I'm sure I've heard it said the wrong way before. Another good one is the word could've, COULDOF. For those of you who've been speaking English for a while and have been, got your hand wrapped with a ruler, enough times probably can tell others that it's actually could have. So the correct expression is could have, not could of. Incorrect, I could have danced all night. Correct, I could have danced all night. They don't elaborate. It's just that's the answer. It's could have, or when you abbreviate, it's could have with a apostrophe VE. And I think that's what's throwing people off, is they're hearing the apostrophe VE and not the, have. So this is, again, another example of just different words that you got to remember. The way we often say it is not necessarily the correct way. You got to find the correct way. So the next is chapter 6, use tricky singulars and plurals with assurance. Okay, so, and you can again see there's some samples over here. This is where you have words like antenna become antennae, or in this case, alumna become alumni. So it's giving you the prefixes that don't normally end in es when you go into a plural. So an octopus, octopi, annex, annexes. What might be an example of that. So it's a pretty straightforward chapter. It's just there's the entire chapter. Once you get below the description, is a chart full of just words. The whole thing is just words that tell you the correct way to say their plural form. So like larva becomes larvae. Locus becomes loci. I don't know if you knew that. Now, media is an interesting one because media goes, it's become such a common word that you can use media in both singular and plural, whereas the original way was medium as a singular. But yeah, it's just a long list of words that they give you the singular and plural form when they're non-standard. So really helpful stuff. And again, you don't need Google is because you can have the book for the low, low price of cheap. And then just at the end of the chapter, they give you some other practical advice, like how to use names as a plural. So like the Rafferties, you wouldn't say Rafferty, with an IES. It's the YS because they're names. So that's an example there. They give you plurals of numbers. It's pretty good. The next is chapter 7, because that's what normally follows chapter 6. That's how it's supposed to be, at least for and now. I don't know what will happen in 2023, but 2022 so far, 7 still follows 6. So hopefully that'll last. 7 is some surprising ways errors occur, and this is a good one because this is a reminder that people have typos. And so this is kind of going into the proofreading section whenever you're writing, is always go back and double check what you've written, because you want to make sure that you didn't mistype something, and that's whether it's you or your copy editor or whoever. And there's an example, a story in here that she talks about, I believe, if not misinterpreting it, where there was a costing mistake. Maybe that was the next one. One of these chapters, she goes through the story of a book editor, or maybe the printer. Somebody had misspelled the title on the book. Like it would be as if this had said word savvy, and printing out 10,000 copies of a misspelled word is disastrous, and it costs the publisher. It's in the very first paragraph. It was an Australian publisher, cost them $20,000 to correct because they had a really bad. I'm not going to repeat it. Let me put it that way. This is not the kind of word that needs to be in a transcript. So let's just say it was a bad mistake. It was for a cookbook, and they misspelled the wrong thing, and it made it sound horrible. So you have to check. You have to be very careful about the words that you sign off on. Errors initiated by spell checkers, how typos occur, errors caused by the use of computerized thesaurus, and so on. These are some of the subheadings that are in this chapter that just kind of give you a perspective of the different ways you can destroy your reputation through using the wrong words. So I find that interesting. Then of course chapter 8 is how to catch wrong word errors. Hopefully you can see that. This is good because these are some practical tips that even I will go through with my students whenever they're trying to read through their essays before they turn it in. It tells you how to proofread like a professional, and it uses a lot of the same techniques that I've been suggesting myself, including reading backwards. When you read backwards, you have to focus on the word, not the context. And when you focus on the word, it's much easier to see whether or not you spelled it correctly, whether or not you're using the right one. And of course, if you go back and practice the words you've learned throughout your other chapters, you can also see if you've misused any of those. They also give you some tips on like where to study, where to proofread. Stuff that really should be common knowledge, but if you're inexperienced as a writer, you may not have that knowledge. So, there's things that you can go through and just double check. Excuse me. I will say the exercise in this is absolutely atrocious. It's this herd in a bar, but it's spelled, Herd, which is like the word for livestock when they get together. It's like every word is a mistake, and it's like an entire passage, and it's painful to read. I don't recommend you try to fix that one without having a cup of coffee or something on hand, or if there's nothing to watch on Netflix. It's pretty brutal, but it's useful if you need to practice. But anyway, that's the proofreading chapter. Then the one I really find unique in this book is chapter 9, where it's talk the talk, keeping abreast of buzzwords. So this is, I think, a unique part of this book that not many other books cover. So let's just kind of go on that for a second. Most books on grammar, they're gonna cover a lot of what this one does, or what this one, basically kind of hovers around. This is mainly a word book. This is no punctuation or anything like that. It's a great compliment to the one I did last year called The Best Punctuation Book Ever by June Casagrande, which, by the way, if you have not seen that video and you like the idea of having a book that tells you all the rules, that's another one I highly recommend. It's one of my favorite grammar books or punctuation books of all time. And it's one of my more viewed writing bookshelf books or videos. I think it's the kind of video I wouldn't really expect to be popular, but it's I think in my top 5 of the entire series. So I definitely recommend you check it out if you haven't already, but it tells you how to do punctuation well. Well, I would say this is a great complement to that book, because this is, again, how to use words well. And the fact that it adds buzzwords, I think, is just, kind of a bonus cherry, so to speak. So anyway, what this will do is it gives you some tips on how to write a good resume. The kinds of things that employers ignore in a resume. I know, would you really expect to have a book like this talk about how to write a resume and actually get through the gatekeepers? It's a bonus. And one of the tips they teach you is learn the buzzwords of your industry that you're trying to get into, so that you can demonstrate your knowledge of the profession you're going into, rather than just using generic, I am a stellar candidate because I am a hard worker, and, I'm a people person, and I'm a go-getter, and all the cliches you've heard before. This is telling you, hey, don't do that, because they're not looking for that. They're looking for, do you know the job? Not, how nice are you, but can you do the work? And you can do the work if you know the buzzwords, is essentially the concept here. I'm sure there's a lot of nuance in that, and I'm sure that's not always true. But the idea is, if you can learn your buzzwords, you have an edge in the game. So here's a short section where they give you a lot of buzzwords for industry. So, for example, like the energy industry has words like integrated company, the Kyoto Protocol, climate change, green energy, environmental conservation, Exxon Valdez, OPEC, which, if you don't know, is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, and then there's renewable energy, non-renewable natural resource recycling and scarcity. Business has some good ones here. You have strategic planning, product positioning. Actually, I'm not going to read all the business ones. Those have a habit of putting people to sleep. Who wants to hear all of them? But you have, the standards like team building, performance, and productivity. I cannot speak, sorry. Performance and productivity improvement, new media, whatever. I mean, I'm boring myself listening to it. But you can hear that there's buzzwords in there. And one of the things that makes me laugh is near the end, after she gives you all the powerful buzzwords, like the entire list of them, it keeps on going. And if you're wondering, yes, I read them all. Because I'm not dedicated to give you a full understanding of what's in here. By the time we get to the end of the chapter, she has a fun game where you play jargon bingo, or buzzword bingo. And so she says the prevalence of this if she says at the end of the day one more time, I'll scream. The prevalence of this irritating state of linguistic affairs has led to the development of buzzword bingo, a handmade game attendees can play on the sly when trapped in a boring meeting. And so here's how it's played. And then she actually tells you how to play buzzword bingo, and then she gives you an actual game. And her advice is, don't let the boss see you play it. So she's teaching you how to be a bad employee, but it's at least it passes the time well. I can tell you, I've been in meetings where I would have enjoyed having that game, and I'm sure you have too. So once you get to the end of that chapter, you're basically done. All you have left is the answers to the quizzes that you had throughout the book. So you're never in the dark. And again, if you are a second language learner and you're still learning English, you don't necessarily have to worry about not knowing how to answer the quizzes, because you can test yourself and then check the back of the book for the answers. It's all there. And then certainly, if you need more practice, you can try again. I wouldn't write in the book. I don't do that anyway. But if you write in the book, you can't do it again. If you write on a separate sheet of paper, and then you can mark what chapter it came from or which word it was for, and then go and cross-check it later. It saves you the trouble of having to never get it right again by having the sheet of paper you can just kind of disregard and start over. So I think it's much better to learn how to do grammar when you take a quiz like out of a book if you don't actually write in the book. Always do it on the side. That's my little pro tip today. Not to mention, if you ever don't want the book anymore, like if you own it and you decide, you know what, I'm gonna get rid of it. It's it sells better when you haven't marked it. So, not that you want to sell a book like this, because the whole point of the writer's bookshelf is keep the dang books on your shelf, because you're gonna learn from them. Or unless you want to have your one of your family members learn from it, in which case that's fine. And then you're at the index, and then you have your usual ending with about the author and all that. So, but yeah, that's the Word Savvy. Again, it's an older book. It came out, I think, in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. 2011. Yeah, I'm way behind. I think I bought it in 2014, but yeah, it was already been on the shelf for a while, and it was one of those books that it kept teasing me until I ended up just buying it. So I'm happy I got it, and I think it's a great way to end our season. I was going to do a fifth book for March, but the book I want to do has a sequel coming out toward the end of the year, and I'd rather just do them together. So I'm going to wait till probably next season to get that one. And we'll talk about it then. But yeah, for now, what we'll do next is we'll do a recap episode probably in March. Just so you can go back through and review anything that you missed. I did try to structure this season in a way that each book builds on the last. So if I don't do a retrospective, it's only because I've already ordered it in a way that should help you guys. But I'm still thinking, just because some of the later books were books that I read a long time ago, like the Donald Mass books, I might want to restructure. So there's still a good chance that I will do a retrospective. But other than that, that's the end of season 2. So I do thank you for sticking with it all this time. Let me know which book was your favorite out of all the list. And I understand a lot of you probably haven't caught up yet. There's 30 books for the season. I did 30 books this season. Wow. So that's a lot of books to read and a lot of books to buy. So I don't expect you all to have gotten through all of them. And remember, this series is not necessarily about buying every book. It's about buying the ones that you need in order to get better. But I still want to encourage you guys to check out each one. Because I've learned a lot from them. I do admit that a lot of the books I read today is just refresher, or even just for the sake of the series to see if it'll benefit you guys. But the thing about me in particular, and maybe you'll agree, is I like to go back and refresh my memory on things, because practice is the most beneficial teacher beyond reading. Like, you read it to learn, and then you practice to apply. And I always think that's the only way you really can get better at writing or anything, really. But there's something to be said about going back and relearning how to do something in order to make sure you're still on track. Not because you have to relearn it, although it doesn't hurt, because again, I have a bad memory, and when you're writing 80 to 100,000 words in a book, it's really easy to lose your way, and sometimes you want to find your way back. But the other thing is, these books are often inspirational. That's one of the reasons why I do keep going back and checking out new books, is because I like how authors teach things in a different way. I still go back to season 1 with the Larry Brooks books. I remember reading a comment from one of the people who read his books, and they thanked him because it was written in a way that actually made sense. And I understand this completely, because I was in the same camp where I read plenty of books from like agents, Ivy Leaguers, who it's not that they're talking above me, but because they're talking at a higher level, they're also instructing at a higher level, and we don't always want to learn at a higher level. Sometimes we just want to learn in a way that minimizes resistance, right? The less resistance we have toward learning a thing, the more easier we're going to retain that. And you do not need to be a highbrow person to write well. So the simpler that instructors can make it, the better for everyone, and the easier it is to practice. And that's why I picked a lot of the books that I do, because I do think that most of them are accessible, and they niche down into something that's important. So, and I do plan to do that more of that in this next season as well. So before I go, I will talk a little bit about season 3, if you're still watching. Season 3 is, my plan was going to probably make it one of the longest seasons yet, but I do think, because I don't really want to do that to myself or you, I think I'm going to split it up into 2 parts. Or part 1 will be like more the usual crafting stuff, but then part 2 will be the essence of what I really wanted season 3 to be, which is like specialty stuff. So I am going to be focusing on a lot of more genre-based books, where, like, for, let's say if you're a mystery and thriller writer, I've got a few books. Actually, I'll just I'll tease one now. It's going to be months from now before I actually show it off, but I'll just give you, this is what I'm reading right now. It's this How to Write a Mystery with, by Lee Child. He's the editor, and then it's a bunch of people who weigh in on it. I clearly haven't gotten very far. This is the front of the book, but it's one that came out this past year, 2021, and I remember seeing it, I think, on the Barnes & Noble website and wanting it, or wherever, or maybe it was emailed to me, but I wanted it, forgot about it. And then it was at the bookstore, and I'm like, well, let me go pick it up. So that's the kind of thing that season 3 is going to cover, is more of that, just so that's your teaser. There will be a few crap books left over from that I would have done normally in seasons 1 or 2, but just because of just how many books I've covered, I decided to skip them and save them for later. So we'll start earlier on with those, but as I move into the season, I do want to do more genre-based books. So that's sort of the teaser coming in, and then beyond that will be some of the more specialty stuff, like kind of similar to the sources, but they're niched down to genre. So anyway, that'll be season 3. Again, I plan to start that probably this summer. I'm gonna try to record the videos for them soon. Not in any particular order, just to get them ready. I got one right here that I'm not going to show you what it is yet, but there's one that I'm starting. I'll kind of, no, I'm not going to tease it. It's going to be like the second book, if not the first, for season 3. So you'll see it reasonably soon. But yeah, I want to make sure that you guys have some good ones to read, and then, but not be more of the same. I want to try to make it a little different in 3. So anyway, that's the video, and that's the season, and thank you for hanging out. Hopefully the size of these videos haven't ran you off and intimidated you. Also note that I've restructured my YouTube page to show my playlist videos the way that most people do it. I learned how to do that finally. So if you want to catch up on older Writer's Bookshelf episodes, just go to my main page and then just scroll down a little bit, and it's going to be right there. And I think it's going to, I think it's in order of first to last rather than, oldest to newest. So it's always going to start at the Stephen King book. But if you've already read through that, to just click on the playlist and scroll down until you find the current one. But anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, do all the things YouTubers tell you to do. You can support my channel by going to my website and clicking. You can subscribe to my newsletter. The newsletter is more about my books, less about articles and things and all that. But if you do want to just find out what I'm doing, it's a great way to find out is through the newsletter. You do get free ebooks by doing so. I got one that I'm still working on called Paperweight, which I hope to have finished probably in the next 3 or 4 months. Excuse me. It's a hard one to write, so it's not done yet. I'll get there. Yeah, I hope you guys will, if nothing else, subscribe so you can read Paperweight. So I think it's going to be pretty funny. The tagline or the premise right now is Indiana Jones meets The Office. So picture that. And then you get Paperweight. And, anyway, it's fun. But yeah, you can subscribe if you want more information on what I'm doing with my books. And then I just recently picked up a push notification tool So I should be able to give you guys the opportunity to subscribe to push notifications if you're into that kind of thing. I personally don't care about push notifications. I never use them myself, but who am I to stop you guys from using something you like? So if you're the kind of person who likes, push notification, well, guess what? My site, by the time you see this, should have one. And you can come to my site. It's in the link below. Check it out. And then in the lower left corner is a little button that says, get push notifications. And then you can get notified about new articles I posted, maybe videos. I don't know. But definitely like book releases and discounts and things. So another way to stay in touch. So anyway, that's it. I ran on long enough, and I'm sure you're bored, and you probably are looking at your watch now. So I would be too. So thanks again. We'll see you soon for whatever's coming next. And again, if you like the Writer's Bookshelf, please leave a comment. Let me know. The more people comment, the more useful it is to me to know what you all like. And give me suggestions on books you want to see, because I do have a plan for 3 and 4, but at some point I'm going to run out, and at some point I want to know what you all are still interested in, because if I get nothing, I'm going to stop the series. But we're talking probably seasons 5 or 6. But if you have others that you like, just tell me, and I'll see what I can do. And if you're an author, want any of these books, give me a shout out. And I know a couple of you already have reached out to me, so thank you for doing that. But I like hearing from the authors of these books as well. If you've got a new one coming out, let us know, so I can, let the audience know. Anyway, that's it. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.